All right, started the recording. Welcome to GSC once again. Uh, and you're really gonna regret coming here after the first like 10 minutes of this session because it's gonna be a doozy. All right. Oh no, what is this? Oh no, get that off my screen. There we go. That was weird. I don't know what that was. All right. So before we get started, real quick, like Anthony was saying, song of the week. So last week was a bit of a test run. You were our guinea pigs. But we've kind of finalized the rules a bit. So you submit a song every week, and we announce the song of the week at the sessions. So that would be in this part, like pre-session time. And you can listen to it at any point throughout the week, and then at the next session, we'll discuss it in this time or in the text chat since we only have a couple more sessions left, and we kind of want to keep it going through the summer and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, we did wipe the list just because it was a bit of a test, but feel free to re-add anything. Um, and yeah, now onto the main event.
Carter, to
Oh,
interrupt your flow,
okay.
just for the recording, um, we won't be recording like, I mean, I guess we're not listening to the song of the week during the session, which is something that we mentioned before. We're not going to do that. Just make sure you listen to it like on your own time before the session next week, and that's how that's going to work.
Yeah, don't wanna don't wanna get hit by any copyrights or anything, so those are not fun. Um, okay. Now onto the main event, music theory crash course, and it's gonna be huge. So I hope you went to the bathroom. I hope you have a drink or a snack with you, maybe some hard alcohol to get you through this. Uh, but yeah, it's gonna be a bit long. It's gonna cover a lot, but hopefully it'll go swimmingly. All right, where do we even start? Right, the disclaimer. Right, I almost forgot about that. So it's a pretty daunting thing, music theory. So we kind of outlined it in a way that at least we felt was good to kind of pick up the pace as it goes, and just kind of everything kind of adds on to the previous thing. Um, However, this is not extensive, and there's a ton of stuff that we don't even talk about here. If we did talk about everything, this session would take probably until next week. So please ask any questions you have along the way, if you have any. Um, Especially since a lot of this is kind of weird and difficult to understand at first. Um, but yeah, once again, all these sessions are recorded and archived. So if you maybe missed anything on a previous slide, you can always go and check that. I'm gonna probably check this in the future because I don't know. I feel like it's a good resource to have. Now onto the outline. So we're going to be covering some terminology, then we're going to be going over notes, scales, inversions, voicings, modes, key signatures, the circle of fifths, and time signatures. So that's a lot. However, we'll be good. Um, all right. You know what? Let's just get right into it. Terminology, because you got to know the words first. And that's a lot of words. Um, so we got scales, which are a set of notes ordered by pitch, which we'll get into very shortly. There are scale degrees, which are the position of a note in a scale. There's a chord, which is a set of multiple notes, and then there's triads, which are a chord with exactly three notes. So a triad is a chord. A chord is not always a triad. It's like a rectangles and triangles or rectangles and squares thing. Um, Time signatures is the beats per measure or bar. Then there's the tempo, which is the speed that the music is kind of going at, represented in beats per minute. And then there's a few different note related things like semitones or half tones. They're sometimes called, or half steps as well. And that's the distance between two adjacent notes. And then there's a whole tone, which is two semitones. So it's literally just two halves equals a whole. 2 semitones equals a whole tone. All right, and then we have an octave. It doubles. It's the double of a pitch's frequency, so it's 12 semitones up. So it's like C, and then you stretch your finger to hit the other C. That's an octave higher. That they're the same note. It's just double the frequency. And then there's a key, which is the scale that performs the basis of a composition. We'll get into that later when we get into key signatures. All right, now onto the fun stuff: notes, scales, and inversions. So this is like the raw basics and how to like kind of arrange them to make sounds that sound nice. All right, so we're starting super basic here. If you know anything about music, this is pretty much as basic as it gets. But we wanted this to be a good introductory crash course in case you are someone who knows nothing about music and wants to. So this is a piano. That's all the keys on the piano basically, and it just repeats this over and over again. So all the white keys go up, just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, keeps going. And then there's 5 black keys spread throughout these, and each of those are sharp and flat keys. So the only reason that there's 2 names on those black keys is that if you go up, let's say you're on C and want to go to the black key above it, which is 1 semitone up, you go from C to C sharp, and if you go down, then it's D to D flat. So either way, C sharp and D flat are the same note, A sharp and B flat are the same note. All of it is just the same name, or the same note, just different names. So it can get confusing, but after a while you'll get used to it. So same notes but on a staff. So we got the treble clef there, which is off on the left side, and that basically just represents the upper kind of echelon of the notes. And those are just which lines and which spaces the notes go on. And as you can see on the right side, there's also the bass clef, which is kind of similar. It's just kind of shifted down 1 line. And in the bottom right corner, there are the 4 clefs, which honestly, you only need to worry about these 2. Alto and tenor clefs you rarely ever see, and if you do, you probably shouldn't be going there. Treble is higher, bass is lower, as you can expect by bass. So let's go into note lengths. Generally, these are the main ones. You get whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighths, and sixteenths. And as you can see by this kind of tree, 1 whole note is equal to 2 half notes and 4 quarters, and 8 eighths, 16 sixteenths. So it's easy that way, especially since quarter, eighth, 16th, that represents, or the word for it actually represents the value of it. So you're like, okay, it's a quarter of a whole note, or it's an eighth of a quarter, or it's an eighth of a whole note, sorry. So you cut them in half as you go down. We're not going to talk about triads today, but we are going to talk about dotted notes, because that comes up a bit later. So you add a dot to any of these, and it adds the value of 1 row down. So the example we use here is you take a quarter note, slap a dot on it. That is a quarter note plus an eighth note. So it is 1.5 of the value. And we're not going to talk about double dotted eighth notes or double dotted notes in general, because those are also incredibly weird. And this is a great chart that I found. It just kind of shows, once again, the notes and the lengths, but it also shows the rests if you have sheet music. So you got the upside down top hat is the whole rest, which would be a 4-beat rest. And then right side up top hat, that's the half rest. Little squiggly line, that's a quarter rest, and so on and so forth. As well, the other thing I really like about this chart is that it shows what it looks like in a 4/4 measure. So we're going to get into what 4/4 means later on, because essentially it's just 4 beats per measure. when we get to time signatures, but this is what it looks like in a standard 4/4 set of music. Any questions so far? If I see typing, I will stop. I do not see typing. Okay, moving on. The major scale. This is pretty much the main building block of music. Like most modern music, most pop music is made with major scale, and just major chords. So as you can see on the piano there, that is a C major triad, or C major chord, which is C, E, and then G. And what you're gonna do is, for the major scale, is it goes, for the C major scale at least, it's all of the white keys. So you skip one key, you skip one key, you go to the next key, skip one, skip one, skip one, next key. So, as you can see there, there's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. And then below it, there's the note values, and then below that, I put in whether it's a whole step or half step to the next note. Because that's a really useful resource for me, at least, and that really helped with learning music for me. 1, 3, 5 is a major triad. Generally, that's what you're gonna see when you see a major chord, or that's what you're gonna hear. Because the 1 and the 5, that's just kind of a generic empty shell of a chord, or a power chord, as guitar players call it. And then the 3 in that, the major third, which is just a 3 normally, that is usually what denotes whether or not it's major or minor. So a major third obviously means it's major. Usually it's either denoted by no marking, so it's just the letter C or A or whatever major it is, or the word mage or major. And just a couple examples. Again, C major is C, E, G, and then A major. You take A, and then you skip 2 whole steps up, so that's C sharp, and then you skip a half step and a whole step, and that's E. Generally, best notes to use that sound well with this are the 1, 3, 5, which is the C, E, G, triad, but also the 7, the 9, the 11, and the 13. As you're probably looking up at the thing, yes, it only goes up to 7. However, the 8, as it's sometimes referred to, is also the 1. So basically just subtract 8 from any of those numbers, and subtract 7 from any of the numbers, and that's which scale degree it is. So the 9 is the second note, so that would be the D in the case of C major, 11 would be the F, and 13 would be the A, so on and so forth. Alright, and now the minor scale. So it's usually used to evoke the big sad in music. It's usually seen in a lot of like kind of more subdued pieces. And yeah, it's been used for centuries just to make people sad in a way that you can't do with the more peppy major scale. So take the major scale, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and you flat the third, flat the sixth, and flat the 7. So you just take those 3 notes and move them down 1. So it's the A major scale, or the A minor scale, sorry, is just the C major scale but down. So it's no sharps or flats. It makes it easy to learn. So it's just A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. And the pattern for this is whole, half, whole, half, whole. And that brings you back to A. Like I brought up in the major triad, a minor triad would be just flatting the third. So that would be a 1, 3, or 1 flat 3, 5, sorry. And it's denoted in sheet music by a lowercase m or the word min. And just a couple examples there are the ACE, which is shown on the keyboard there. And back to C, C minor would be C, E flat, and then G. So you just take the E and then drop it a flat. All right. And like I said about how A minor and C major are the same notes, that means that they are relative major and minor scales, which we get into briefly a bit later on. All right, harmonic minor scale. It's weird. It's the natural minor with a raised 7. So it's just a flat third and a flat sixth from a major scale. So for the case of A minor, that would be A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, and then A. So the pattern there is whole, half, whole, half, whole plus a half. So you skip 3 notes and then a half. So it's a little weird. It's sometimes used in like classical stuff or jazz stuff. Personally, I haven't really found a use for it, to be honest. But music is about experimentation, and I just haven't experimented with this one yet. And another weird one is the melodic minor scale, which is the natural minor with a raised 6 and 7. So that is just a flat 3. But the key thing here is that that's only when you're going up the scale. So when you're going down, that's just the normal natural minor scale. So for the example of A melodic minor, that would be A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then G sharp, and then A. So the pattern there is whole, half, whole, half. I know this is a lot, but the melodic minor and the harmonic minor, usually stick away from them if you're just learning things. Just stick with the normal natural minor scale. That generally will give you a bit more experience with that, and then you'll feel more comfortable going into different areas in that department. All right. So, again, like Anthony just said, any questions, anytime, please drop them in the chat. We're throwing a ton of information at you, so if you're lost about anything, please let me know and I will pump the brakes. Scale degrees, I brought them up a bit when I was talking about the scale, and as you probably noticed with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for each of those scales, they correspond to these. So each of these is a note in the scale, and they go by their fancy names. Are the tonic, which is the root note. So it's the resolution. It's the most important note of the scale, and it kind of defines what the scale is. There's the supertonic, which is just one whole step above the tonic, and it's usually kind of dissonant. There's the mediant, which is the midpoint between the tonic and dominant, which, like I said, the 3 usually determines whether it's major or minor. There's the subdominant, which is just below the dominant. It's also kind of dissonant, especially when they're that close. That's why you usually go to the 9 or the 11 in the case of the 2 and the 4. Then there's the dominant, which is the second most important note of the chord. Hence why a 1-5 chord is a power chord. Then there's the submediant, which is the midpoint between the tonic and subdominant. I don't know why it's called the submediant, but it is what it is. Then the flat 7. That is the subtonic, which is one whole step below the tonic. And then you have the leading tone, which is the normal 7, or the natural 7, which basically just leads well into the tonic. And then once again, the 8th note of the scale is the tonic. It's the exact same as the 1. So you're probably noticing there's a flat 5 or flat 7 in there, when there's no flat 7 in the major scale. That's because the flat 7 is just that important, I guess. But it's also because of its use in the minor modes, and the minor scales and all that. For major keys, the relative minor key is the submediant, or the 6th note. So in the key of, or in the scale of C major, that would be the A. And for a minor key, the relative major key is the mediant, or the 3rd note. So A, B, C, C is the 3rd note, C is the relative major to A minor. All right, and now this is where the fun starts to really kick in. Inversions. We're just working with triad inversions here, just because that's the most simple and it's easiest to see. So it's basically, in layman's terms, just a change of the lowest note of a chord from the root. So it makes it sound cool. It kind of mixes it up so you don't just hear the same chord every single time. So the example here that we use is a C major triad. So it has three positions being a triad. So it has the root position, which is C, E, G. And that's just, the general how you're going to see it. Then there's the first inversion of it, which is you take the C, move it to the top, or move it one octave up, sorry, and the other two notes you keep the same, and that's E, G, C. And then you have the second inversion, which is you move the next lowest note up an octave as well. So you got G, C, E. All of those are a C major chord. All of that's a C major triad. It's just the different inversions to make it sound cool. And as you can see there, it also says C root position, C over E. That just means that E is the lowest note. Therefore, it's the first inversion. And same with the C over G. And as you could probably expect, the more notes there are in a chord, that means the more inversions you're going to have. So a 1, 3, 5, 7 chord, or a 4-note chord, that would have 3 additional inversions to the root position. So generally just the amount of notes there are in the chord, that's how many different inversions there are if you include the root position. All right. And now voicings before we wrap up this section and get into the next one. Voicings are just the way the chord is structured. So with inversions, you take a C major triad that's just C, E, G, all of it's close together. That would be a closed position chord. So that's when the chord is really kind of compact and just as tight as it can get. Whereas an open chord, as you can see there on the right, it has a much wider spacing between the notes. So that chord on the right would be going from bottom to the top. That would be C, E, E, G. You take out one of the E's, it's literally just a C major triad, but spread out, super open. Therefore, it's the open position. So you can noodle with that and inversions in a really interesting way as well. Because moving one note an octave up could be just considered, okay, this is just a normal triad now. But moving another note now, or down rather, that could also do some very interesting things there. All right, any questions before we get into modes? I'm just going to give it a sec. I'm going to take a sip of my hot chalky. Oh my god, it's already been 23 minutes. That's fun. All right, I'm assuming you're good. Cool. Modes, they're really good to know. They make you sound really smart when it comes to music and just discussing music. But prepare your eyes. There's going to be a lot of text on the next slide, and I'll explain it as we go. All right, so these are the modes. Essentially, in barest form, they're just a subset of a scale. So you take the C major scale, we're just going to run with that for a bit. And it starts on one of the notes of that scale. So the Dorian starts on the 1 of a scale. Ionian starts on the 1 of a scale. Dorian starts on the 2, Phrygian on the 3, Lydian on the 4, Mixolydian on the 5, Aeolian on the 6, and Locrian on the 7th note of the scale. So that's what the kind of middle column is there. And then just to the right of that, you get what the scale is if you just go up from the note you start on. So let's say you don't know, okay, this is in the key of C major, and let's say you're doing D Dorian, and you didn't know that was in C major. So you would start on a D, and then you would go to the second note of a scale, and then the flat 3 of that major scale, the 4, the 5, the 6, and then the flat 7. So on the right there, that's just all of the different things you need to do to a major scale to turn it into one of the modes. All right, all that's going to stay in case you're like taking a screenshot or something, but I'm going to go to the next slide. So there are 3 major modes, and that's the Ionian mode, the Lydian mode, and the Mixolydian mode. And the Ionian mode is just the major scale. So C major, that is also C Ionian. And the great thing about this is that if you play a triad from any of these three modes, it will be a major triad. So it's really good for just wanting, okay, I want a major chord progression, only major chords, because you really want it to be happy or something. You're Pharrell Williams because you're happy. If you pick the 1 or the 4 or the 5 to start on, that is generally a great way to be like, okay, this is a major chord progression. So the 1-4-5 progression that's found in jazz, a lot of the time, that is literally just Ionian, Lydian, and then Mixolydian. And it's also found a lot in blues, particularly blues jazz. But yeah, that's what this is. It's just 4 chords. They're all the exact same. They're all major. If you're in a major key. So the opposite of that, minor modes. So you got Dorian, you got Phrygian, and you got Aeolian. And as you're probably noticing, there's a capital I, capital IV, capital V, and then the Dorian, Phrygian, and Aeolian are all lowercase. And we'll get to Locrian in a second, because that one's weird. Once again, the 6th note of the scale, that's the natural minor, or that's the relative minor. So naturally, the Aeolian mode is the natural minor scale. So once again, it's just the major scale starting on the 6th note. That is the minor scale. That's the relative minor scale. And if you take a triad for any of these, it will be a major, word salad right now. It'll be a minor chord. All right, now the weird one, Locrian. It's really weird. It's diminished, which is what the little circle there means, which basically just means it's dissonant as hell. Don't worry about this one. Generally, don't worry about this one. We don't talk about it here. It's weird. It sounds kind of gross, as you can tell by all of the flat notes, including the flat 5, which that's the thing that really sets it off. And that's what makes it diminished, is the flat 5 there. So it's weird. Don't worry about this one. Generally try to stay away from it unless you're trying to resolve into the root. All right, so modes, once again, using the C major scale, or the C Ionian, going through just based on the C, that would be C Ionian, D Dorian, E Phrygian, F Lydian, G Mixolydian, A Aeolian, and B Locrian. All of those are the exact same notes. So it's great to know that. It's really helpful for like structuring chords and stuff and structuring progressions. Really good to know stuff. So yeah, all of those same chords, or same notes, sorry. Any questions about modes before we move on? I need another sip. My throat. Oh. All right. Moving on. All right, keys and the circle of fifths. So its scales, once again, just slightly different. So we're gonna get into a bit of sheet music stuff here. Generally, what you're gonna see at the beginning of a sheet music piece, unless you play something like viola, like Winston was saying, with the alto and tenor clefs, what you're going to see is a treble clef and then the key signature there. So it's dictated by the scale that the piece is generally in, which is the key. And essentially just what the key signature does is it dictates the sharps and flats in a piece. That's true, bass clef is also a thing. I should know this, I'm a bass player. But yeah, it dictates the sharps and flats in a piece. So any sharps, flats, or naturals that don't follow this are called accidentals. So as you can see on the right, any of those notes, if you see that, that is what we call an accidental. So if let's say F sharp or F, let's say there's an F sharp in the key signature, and you want to play an F there at the bottom. you would put that little square thing with the two lines. That would mean, okay, it's just a normal F. Or let's say you wanted to play an F flat, that'd be what you put there. Or let's say there's no sharps or flats or anything, you would put, just a sharp there. So that just denotes that, okay, this note is different from the key signature. So don't worry about what the key signature says, just play this. All right. So we're about to get into the circle of fifths. It's going to be fun. So any number of sharps or flats in a key signature, they always go in a particular order. So it's really easy to memorize it that way. So the major and minor keys only dictate the chords seen. So visually on a key signature, they could be identical. So like, once again, age-old example that I keep bringing up, C major equals A minor. So it doesn't really matter which one the key is in. It just matters the notes. All right, onto the circle of fifths, because that ties in directly with this. So every time you go up a fifth, you add a sharp. And every time you go down a fifth, you add a flat. And the great way to memorize this, that I was taught in school, Daniel was also taught this in school, so I know it wasn't just mine. But for sharps, it's Father Charles goes down and ends battle, which just is F, C, G, D, A, E, B, which is the order that you add a sharp in. And then there's the flats, which is the opposite of that. Battle ends and down goes Charles Father. So it's also great because they're the same thing, just backwards. And fair warning, the image that you're about to see may scare you with how much information there is on here. However, once you give it a second, once it settles in a bit, it's very useful, and it's great to know. Bop. So that's the circle of fifths. As you can see, this image covers pretty much everything you need to know about it. It has the major keys and the minor keys, and the corresponding key signature for it. So once again, C major and A minor, they have nothing, no sharps or flats. And then if you go clockwise, that adds sharps. So the first sharp there is F, and then it's C, and so on through the Father Charles thing. And if you go the other way, you take them away until you get to C, and then when you go counterclockwise, the key of F major, for example, that is one flat, that's B flat. And then the key B flat has B flat and E flat, and so on. You go through the acronym. It's really helpful. And yeah, it's just really good to know this. That way, when you look at a piece, you're like, okay, this is what key it's in. These are the notes I can play. These are the safe notes, which is just great to know, particularly when you're in a live setting. However, I do recognize that since we don't really work with sheet music too often in this program, unless we don't use it at all in the program, but if you're really wanting to write it out in that way, that's how it works for you. This is great to know. This is going to be really good to know. And particularly in the future, you're going to need to be using sheet music like this. So it's good to know. Once again, because I keep saying it's good to know. All right. Any questions before we get on to the big one? Yeah, I agree. Sheet music reading is incredibly important. Yeah, like I could barely sight read when I joined the jazz band back in grade 11, I think it was, or grade 10. I don't know, one of those. But Tool is coming. But yeah, if you're a musician, learning how to read sheet music is an invaluable skill. All right. This is the part that I was excited for. Time signatures. So, as we all probably know, if you've seen what I send in here occasionally, I love screwing with these because they're a lot of fun to mess with. So, I was really hyped up to get to this one. So, time signatures. Once again, mostly a sheet music thing. We should have a counter for how many times I've said the next one's a big one. I don't think that we'd like to see how big that number gets, though. All right. So it basically just defines how to divide notes for readability. So there's 3 types. There's simple, compound, and complex. The 3 images below are not examples of those 3, even though there are exactly 3 images. But those are just some example time signatures. You got 4/4, the most common time signature. It's known as common time for that reason. Then there's cut time, which is 2/2. It's called cut time because it's literally half of 4/4. And then we got 3/8, which less common, but it's seen pretty often in like jazz and stuff like that. All right, the big slide. So it's made up of 2 numbers, right? Unless it's one of the weird symbols that's either representing common time or cut time, which we're not worrying about those. So the top number is how many beats are in a bar, and the bottom number is the value of a beat. So the 4 represents a quarter note, 2 represents a half note, 8 represents an eighth note. Essentially, you take a whole note and divide by the bottom number of the time signature, and that's the value of the beat. So once again, 4/4, the most common time signature, to the point where it's literally called common time. And that should just really nail in this as an example is 4 beats where 1 quarter note is 1 beat per bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 1 bar of quarter notes, whatever tempo that was. That's 4/4. Next slide. All right, simple meter. This is where it gets weird. Or it starts to dip its toe into the weird territory. So they're binary beats, which is when the beats are equal to the division of 2 on the denominator. However, 3/4 is 3 quarter notes. That's kind of the exception to it. 3 being the numerator of this is just kind of, it's familiar to a lot of people. A lot of people see it as the waltz beat, where it's like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and that's kind of built into them for like the stepping thing for a waltz. So simple meter, the top number is either 2, 3, or 4. It's simple. So some common examples again: 2/2, 2/4, and 2/8. Those are all common time, or not common time. Those are simple meters. 3/2, 3/4, and 3/8. All of those are common, even though they don't, or they're common, but they're simple as well. And then there's 4/2, 4/4, and 4/8, which are simple, not common. 4/4 is common. And just below the value of each note there is what it looks like in 1 bar. Very useful. Or not in 1 bar, it's just the amount of notes there. And once again, this is mostly about feel. A lot of time signature things is about feel, and just making it look nice for a sheet of music. I can clap out some of these. So 3/4, that'd be 3 quarter notes. So it's like that. And then once again, 4/4 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I really hope that's coming through. I have no idea if it is. Yeah, it'll. Oh, for releases in 3/8. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Huh. Beethoven is a prog man. That's cool. All right, now let's get into the clap out 3/8. It's literally the same as 3/4. It's just whether or not it's faster or slower. So either way, it's 3 per bar. 13/8 with and every beat are triplets. Oh god. I might need a few minutes for that one, so I'm just gonna not try to tackle that. All right, compound meter. This is where it gets really fun. This is the stuff I really like. similar to simple meter, it doesn't matter what the denominator is. All that matters is the top number. So the beat is divided in 3 equal parts for these. So the beat value is either like 6, 9, 12, 6 again. It's just a multiple of 3. So the beat value, this is where it gets weird, is 3 times the denominator. So for the examples there, 6, 8, the beat value is 3 times the denominator. So 3 times 8, that is 3/8 notes. So you take 3/8 notes right back to the beginning. 2/8 notes equals 1 quarter note plus 1 more eighth note. That is a dotted quarter note. See, it's all coming back. It's all coming together. And there are two beats of those. So 1 bar of 6/8 would be 2 dotted quarter notes. And for another similar example, 9/8, once again, the denominator value is an eighth note. 3/8 notes equals 1 dotted quarter, but there's 3 beats this time around because it's 9/8. So it would be one dotted quarter note, 2 dotted quarter note, 3 dotted quarter note, new bar. 12/8, that would be the same thing but 4 dotted quarters. And then there's 6/4, which is the denominator value is a quarter note. Multiply that by 3, you get a dotted half note, which the value of that is obviously 3 quarter notes. So, 3 quarters of a whole note, and there's 2 of those in 1 bar of 6/4. So these are what we call ternary beats. So that just means it's a multiple of 3. There's it's one beat is equal to 3 of the denominator. So that's what that means. The weird thing though is that 3/8, as you saw in the previous slide, 3/8 is not compound. It is a simple meter, and that is because 1 beat is 1 dotted quarter. Did I miss anything on this slide? I did not. Let's go on to the fun one. All right. And what you're all talking about right now with 13/8 and stuff like that is complex meter. This is the really fun stuff. All right. So it was basically invented by like jazz back in the early 1900s when they were like, yo man, let's experiment with stuff. All this 4/4 thing is, and this 3/4 thing, it's getting kind of old. Let's be weird and really technical. So essentially, layman's terms, it is a mix of binary beats and ternary beats. So it can often be seen as 2 time signatures added together, like 3/4 plus 4/4, that kind of thing. So it's when the multiple or the numerator is either a multiple of 2 or higher than 4. So 8, 16, etc. But it's also not a multiple of 3. Or just other weird ones, like 5/8, 7/8, 8/8 even, 10/8, and 11/8. So the great examples here are 5/8, which is familiar to a lot of people who like prog. Same with 7/8. 7/8 is one of the most used progressive rock kind of time signatures. And as you can see here in the middle there's a lot of the word or. And the great thing about complex meter is that, again, it's all about feel. So just writing 5/8, it doesn't strictly tell you which beat or which half of it is the ternary beat and which part's the binary beat. So for the top example, it's the ternary and then the binary. So 1 and 2, or 1 and 2 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Whereas the bottom is the binaries first, so it's 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and similarly with all the rest of them, you can flip it around, make it really interesting. Like 7/8 as the example. you take the binary, the binary 2, you put them at the back, you put the ternary 1, and that's at the beginning. 8/8, the reason that's not common time is because it's two groupings of ternary beats, and then it's the binary beat. Or, well, it's two groupings of ternary beats and then a binary beat as well. So as you look through these, you can see, okay, it's all about the groupings and where you put the emphasis, because the first beat of all of these is generally where the emphasis is. And as you can see by the quarter note and dotted quarter note examples, that's generally where the emphasis is in the bar. So grouping these different parts and rearranging the orders of these for emphasis allows for the emphasis to be on the different parts. And doing the additive thing can really make it easier to see where the emphasis is placed if you're doing sheet music. So instead of writing 7/8, you would write 3/8 plus 4/8 or something like that. And just because I needed a tool example here, you can mix these up as well. So the song Schism, which is one of Tool's most popular songs, the bass line and the main like melody of the song alternates between 5/8 and 7/8 every bar. So the main pattern is like do 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 do. So it's 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3. So it's great for complexity that way. It kind of locks you in. It really gives you this kind of sense of, okay, we're going somewhere. I don't know exactly where to bop my head to, especially when polyrhythms are involved, which we're not talking about today, sadly. Wow, we're actually doing really well for time. That's crazy. I might touch on polyrhythms then. I don't have a slide for it, but I might do it verbally. But yeah, when you mix complex meters, or even if you mix compound meters plus simple meters, it can really spice it up and really add a lot of variety to your music. Codas, I am not gonna touch on here. I tried to make it more about like practical theory that you could use like in a DAW rather than specifically sheet music theory. That would probably be covered in a potential part 2 if we do that. I'm honestly shocked that we're almost done, to be honest. Actually, real quick, any questions about time signatures so far? Because I just threw a lot of mud at the wall that all of you are standing against. The concept of coda applies perfectly to adaptive music. Yeah, it does actually. Wow, that's pretty cool. I honestly didn't even think about that. That's really interesting. Oh yeah, I agree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just kind of wrapping up the time signature thing here. Once again, like I've said, ooh, yeah, reading sheet music specific session could be very interesting because that's a ton of stuff we could do there. Yeah, like that could probably last a few hours straight. All right, so time signatures. Like I said a few times, I'm just gonna reiterate it here. It's mostly about feel and readability. If you don't care about the readability and you know where the feel is and you know where the pocket is and you can just slide in there, that's fine. You don't really need to worry about it. Like particularly in a DAW, I've kind of experimented with using it and not using it. Like my new song that I'm still working on, it's like 11 minutes right now, I think. Scriptures is what it's called. It has around a dozen time changes in it. And I actually set it up this time, like with the actual markers in FL Studio, and it is the biggest pain, because anytime I need to move something, I need to move the time signature as well, or else it'll screw with some other stuff. Whereas with some of the other songs that I've written with a lot of time signature changes, like Statera, the 10-minute one that I spent way too long on and it ended up being terrible, and Visions, one of my more recent songs. They both have a ton of time signature changes. I didn't strictly do it in the DAW. I just kind of wrote out the patterns, put them in, played along with it. I'm like, okay, this fits. And yeah, honestly, it still worked. So, in my opinion, it's only really important when you're trying to play with a metronome or just trying to keep track of the one of each bar. But if you have a drum pattern set up or a couple drum patterns set up, being like, okay, this one's the 5/8 one, this one's the 5/4 one, this one's the, I don't know, 13/8 or 13/4, whatever I wrote that one part in. Like just having that alone to show you where the one is and where each beat lands, that can really, really help with readability from the DAW side. And yeah, once again, just iterating it. Word salad. Just reiterating one more time about this. Sheet music, you're gonna need it because it really shows phrasing so much more clearly with it than if you just had free time. Free time is a real thing. That's just kind of when it's like, okay, play at your own pace, or just kind of feel it out. Like it's particularly when it's used with solo piano pieces I've found. Like if you look up big concertos with just piano for a bit, it's often like free time or just a piano solo that's usually in free time, or it's like, okay, feel it. Yeah, that covers everything. For one last tool reference, you're probably feeling something like this right now, unless you're horribly confused. Yeah, I know we covered a ton today. I am genuinely shocked that this is under an hour right now.
If you're horribly confused, please ask questions.
Yes, any
Please.
questions at all. I see some typing. Learn the guitar.
Also, if you're watching the video, please feel free to go back and watch at half speed to understand anything that Carter just said.
Ooh, was I speaking too fast?
You want to know why you were under an hour?
Oh, God. All right. 800 BPM speaking.
It was fine for me.
Okay.
Hey, don't worry, Carter. You were fine.
Cool.
I'm just rustling your jimmies.
Yeah. All right.
Anthony's just slow.
This is true.
Yeah, I'm slow.
Oh,
Hammer's
right.
back with the.
Step on the gas.
All right. So, if there's any questions, pop them in chat. But to wrap up, thank you for listening. I know that was a ton. These archives exist for a reason. There's a reason why I record all of these, and I have been looking at the mixer this whole time, and I've been looking at the time on the recording, so I know it's actually recording this time, because I'm gonna lose my mind if it doesn't. But yeah, these exist for a reason. Like I said at the beginning, I'm probably gonna check back onto this, for concepts and stuff. All the timestamps, I'll put them into the description to make it as useful as possible to just jump to a certain topic. Like, let's say, okay, I want to learn about modes. You just boom, jump to the mode section, 3 hours in, and there you go.
You mean 10 seconds?
Yeah, I was gonna
Oh,
say,
yeah.
you mean 10 seconds in.
Yeah, on the third syllable I spoke, we were talking about modes. But yeah, thanks a ton for coming out tonight. Next week, we're talking about mixing game audio, which is something I should have learned last year. However, we're talking about it next week. Also, I'm not sure if anyone here went to it yesterday, but playtest nights are starting up. The next one is in 2 weeks on Monday. Our team's probably going to be there. It's a great resource. Use it. Really helps for bug fixes, kind of quality assurance, all of that good stuff that we all need in game dev.
Games user research.
Games user research. This research. This is true.
Keep an eye on GPC.
And keep an eye on
That's all I'm gonna
GPC.
say.
I wonder what that thing at the beginning was. Wow.
Yeah. What was that thing?
I don't know. It
No,
looked like
no idea.
looked like a
think
jam
you're-
with a mechanic on it.
Yeah.
Or GPC.
No clue.
Sounds
no idea.
ridiculous.
Sounds super ridiculous.
I think PowerPoint's just broken.
Yeah, man.
Happened to me last night.
Thanks for coming out. All right,
You
I'm gonna stop the recording. Thank you, everyone.